Good afternoon. Welcome to the Young Women in Technologies 2022 conference and our presentation on the not so secret lives of teams. My name is John Rokicki. I'm a engineering manager here at NetApp. And with me, I have Christine Urvashi and Vidya, who are all going to help us and work through the presentation together with us. So welcome you to this presentation and hope you get quite a bit out of this. So let me move on to our agenda. So today we'd like to talk about the benefits and pitfalls of working in teams. Also want to talk about some of the science around this whole concept of team dynamics. How do people work together and work together effectively? And then more importantly, how can you better succeed in a team? So to start off with, Christine, could we have our first poll?
Yeah, sure. Our first poll, take your time to answer, but basically, do you enjoy working in a team or individually? And we're looking to see what people prefer.
Okay, if we could end the poll.
All right, poll is ended.
All right. So let me ask, well, first we'll go into some of the benefits. There are certainly in working in a team as opposed to on your own, the sort of collaboration and interaction with people can bring about better solutions. You know, being able to share work, there's often less work for an individual when it can be shared amongst others. There's opportunities to grow and learn from other people, being able to hear new ideas, new perspectives, that that type of benefit. Sometimes there's an increased motivation. I don't want to let someone down. I don't want them to let me down. There are different ways of motivation, but also it can be more fun than just being, cloistered away, worrying about something all of your own. So those are some of the benefits, I'm sure. To my volunteers, maybe I can ask, what are some of the things that you've liked most about working in teams as part of your career?
I like the relationships you get with other people. You always kind of struggle at the beginning to figure out how to work together, and then you end up having a good relationship with friends. Yep.
I like having someone to brainstorm with because sometimes I'm thinking of things a certain way and it's nice to have another perspective.
Very good.
I also like to divide and conquer. That's a good point.
Yep.
We're not all good at the same things, and so it's nice to have some help.
Okay.
I like the team just coming together and just like, it's nice to hear diverse perspectives about the topic you're discussing. I like that about working in a team.
Sure. Okay. So, teams are not all love and roses. There are some pitfalls to working within teams. Many times you don't get to pick your teammates. Maybe they're not doing their fair share. Maybe there's miscommunication and expectations that aren't quite the same amongst members of the team that can lead to some division. Personalities, you could have really quiet people, you could have very, boisterous, expressive people, and those may take some time to be able to work through and better understand and find ways of working together. So certainly would like to discuss a little bit more of what are the things that you might dislike most about working in a team. I know, having put the slides together, a lot of the things I mentioned before, you want people to pull their own weight. You want to be able to distribute the work, and sometimes it can get frustrating working out those details. I don't know for my volunteers here whether there's things that you find more challenging, if not a pure dislike, but are there things that you find the hardest about working in teams or getting teams to get together?
Definitely working with different types of personalities, or difficult personalities, people different from you and the way you think. That's definitely one of the things I dislike.
Mhm.
One
I almost always dislike new teams because you have to figure all that stuff out. Like you have these expectations going in that everybody's going to work hard and try to get to this goal. And some people don't really want to work hard or have different motivations. And so
Mhm.
I think the beginning is always really hard to try to figure people out, especially if you're new to them or they're new to you.
Sure.
For me, it's just decisions just take longer to be made because there's just so many perspectives, so many things to, that people bring up that by the time we can find that one solution, it can just, it's just a longer process to get there. So
Okay. Very good. No, those are great insights into working in teams and some of the challenges that we have. So let's take a real quick step back on kind of talking about teams. What is a team? Just a group of people all working together for a common purpose. You know, what makes them good? It's, being able to looking at that sentence, that definition, and find out what are the important words in that definition. What isn't it? A good team isn't necessarily the work, but how the team works. And it's really relationship based. It's you could all be working on anything. You all bring your own strengths and weaknesses, your own sort of motivations and like. How do you best put this together to make the team work towards that common goal or that common purpose? So, this people have worked together in teams for as long as man has existed to some degree. I mean, it wasn't the world did not live off of the evolution of a uh, of society, let's say, for people to be alone. They've worked in teams, people working to hunt and gather together to work collectively as communities. These are all different forms of teams, but until the 1960s, it wasn't really looked at as a science to be able to understand how teams work together. How can we measure their effectiveness? How can we measure or even view what they're doing? So this really started by Dr. Bruce Tuckman back in 1965, before most of us here, even me, was born.
Mhm.
But it was able to, his work was able to define a clear pattern on how teams start up, how they work, and how they end. And if you had to Google anything out of this, and we'll reference some things at the end, the Tuckman model is something that is renowned for describing this, and that's really what the conversation will talk about today. As part of the Tuckman model, they look really at 5 different stages of how a team develops over time. And we'll go through each of these in detail as the slides progress. So, but it really is around forming, storming, norming, performing, and those are all the good rhyming ones. And then adjourning, kind of putting it into it all. That's been added in over time. It doesn't quite rhyme as well, but it is in that whole class of those 5 stages. So we'll talk through these stages and see what we can learn. From a forming stage, these are really the team is just coming together. They may be all put together at one time, they may be put together slowly over time, but eventually you have a team. And with that, you're really looking at the high level learning, being able to understand who everyone is at some level, being able to figure out what are we working on? Why are we here? And then, but in all of that, there's really no testing any boundaries. What are you doing? Are we supposed to be doing that? Everyone kind of assumes, here's who you are, here's what we're doing. We'll figure it out. But it's all very superficial, very uh a very thin coating of what we know in terms of depth of the work we're doing or the people that we're working with. So, one of some of the hallmarks of this is there's really no trust that's been established or built up with people and members of the team, but there's also no vulnerabilities. There's no, I don't know what you dislike or what makes you perform better. Not generally not vulnerable in the forming stage. Really, myself and any other team member in a team, they're really looking to be accepted by the rest of their team. It's all high fives and yeah, let's goes. And um, but it's still very superficial.
John, we had a point in chat that's very
Okay.
similar to the first day of school. The first day
Very,
of
yeah,
school.
yes. First day of school is upon you. Everyone going to new classes, new teachers. Everyone's just kind of figuring out where are we. And so yeah, no, that absolutely.
All right,
So
we
yeah,
have
let's
another
talk
poll.
about some polls.
Sorry. We have another poll. So the next question I'm going to share, let's go ahead and start it. Who has a dog as a pet?
And for those of us who are presenting here, we can't answer these questions. I have a dog.
I do not.
I wish I had a dog.
Me too. I wish I did.
All right, let's
Oh,
end the poll.
yeah. So, okay. So with this, you know, do we have a second getting to know you poll?
We do. All right, I'm going to share it now. Are you the oldest sibling? And since we can't answer ourselves, I'm going to say I'm the oldest in my family.
I am too.
I'm the
I'm,
youngest.
I'm the youngest too.
The two
Half and
oldest
half.
and two youngest.
Make
Yeah.
that 3 eldest. I'm the eldest as well.
That's a whole nother presentation on birth order and how you approach life. Um,
In the middle. Cynthia's in the middle, so that's interesting.
okay then.
Something different.
Middle children are usually the ones seeking to make sure that they're known. So Cynthia, thank you for making
Okay.
sure you're known.
Just speaking up.
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise, the older one takes charge.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the
yeah,
younger ones can do no wrong.
that's
Right?
true.
That's
Right?
so true, John. I agree.
Although now that I'm a parent, the younger ones are just exhausting. So you could do no wrong because the parents are tired.
There you go. So do we have a third question or is
So
that
we just had two.
okay? So oops. So you know, this type of poll, really talks to in this forming mode, just at a high level. I have a dog, what's your name? It's very, very high level, very very superficial of what we know of people. And that doesn't last very long because eventually you've got to do work and you've got to interact with people. And that's when we really start moving into a storming phase. Now, storming phase, the highlights or lowlights, as you may say, is really the conflict and frustration because you're establishing roles. You're trying to say who's going to do what, who's better at doing what, who could contribute in this way. Being able to set boundaries between people. This is my job. This is your job. This is what we're going to work on together. And without having established communication, things of that nature, without learning more of what we're going to get into, there's going to be ways of how do you disagree and how do you resolve disagreement that really is um, really brings out that conflict and frustration in the light. So, um, and when there is conflict, a lot of the times it's being avoided or it's not being managed well. I'm not going to say anything bad, or I'm going to talk to someone over here and talk to them, and it's not really resolved because I'm willing to share in people whom I trust, some of these conflicts and frustrations, but I don't have enough trust in the team or everyone in the team to be able to have these communications. So, you know, the the storming phase, what really gets teams into storming, because they will, and really the whole FUD of life, the fears, whether it's collectively or individually, the uncertainty and the doubt of what we're doing, why are we doing it, why is he doing it, why is she doing it, it pulls into the selfishness of, and I try not to use selfishness in a bad way, but when you're looking at yourself and what you're doing and how you're contributing, it's looking at it from, how am I important to the team? What is my relationship to the team? What does the team expect of me? What do I expect of the team? These are the things that start creating conflict. So really, what gets teams out of storming? Being able to establish ground rules and facts, being able to know to set expectations with the team, with certain individuals, on how people should behave or how they should communicate and inform people. These are all the things that these decisions eventually bring a team out of storming into the next phase. Um, so when the team can focus on the team as a whole, then everyone can be valued as much as you are. So that's just some of the things that will help bring about storming. So let me just see. Okay. So, what are the things that you look for when you're in a team setting? What are the things you're looking for in that person, or if it's not a single team leader, but who do you see as a leader within the team? Because a team doesn't necessarily need to have one leader, but people fall into different roles of leadership depending on the task at hand. Let me look to my panel of volunteers here. What are particular things that you enjoy in someone leading a team, or in either in total or even in part?
I like it when people pick up a specific piece of work to take ownership of. I remember when I was younger and we were on teams for like dissecting things at school. I always remember this. I hated doing the dissecting, but I did not mind doing the questions and doing all the research. And so when you kind of figure out who likes what, and then you have a way to go forward, that part is better than at the beginning just thinking like overwhelmingly like, I really don't want to dissect this animal, I really don't want to do this, so gross. And maybe the other person's like, I don't want to research this, I don't feel like doing that. And so that's kind of the part I like, is when you both have expectations, and then you can kind of figure out which one you want to do and which one they want to do, and people kind of take leadership of specific tasks.
Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah, I think what I like in a leader is someone who has the ability to figure out what each person likes and give them and assign them jobs accordingly. Because sometimes it's hard to even know what someone likes and what they don't like, to your point, Christine. So in a leader, I look for someone who is able to tell what people are into and sort of accordingly guide them.
Very good.
And if I can add to that, what I like in a team lead is somebody who is inclusive, right? They're inclusive of everybody who's in the team and respects everybody's diverse opinions and perspectives. I think that's the most important to me.
Great.
Hi, John, it's Cynthia. Being the middle child, I'll chime in. even though-
Excellent. Please do.
I like someone who's collaborative. I think that's kind of what the last person was saying, that includes a lot of people. And also, in addition to being collaborative, also being decisive, can really make a decision and keep things moving along. So those are
Okay.
two things I really like.
So I have, there's always different people, introverts and extroverts. And extroverts, I think, do pretty well with new teams and trying to figure stuff out because they don't mind stepping outside of, their comfort zone and talking to people. But introverts, what do we do with introverts in a team? Does anyone have any tips or thoughts on this? Like, how do we make sure that we don't just lose that voice because we have introverts as well?
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. And we'll actually talk about some of the ways that we can increase communication and participation on the part of anyone. And it works well for bringing in people who feel a little more shy or a little more introverted. We'll talk through some of those different sort of techniques later in this presentation. But I will open it up to the set of folks we have here in case there's something that you'd like to add now about that subject.
Yeah, John, you'll probably cover it later, but I know one of the things, and the leader or others on the team can actually say, Joe or Susie or whomever, we haven't heard from you. You've been a little quiet. What did you have any input? Do you have anything? And create a space that allows people to say things without judgment too. I know that's one thing, you'll shut people down very quickly if someone comments and you say, oh, that was terrible. So keep it very open and no judgment, but also ask and solicit. Some people are uncomfortable and too shy to say anything, but at least you solicit some feedback.
Absolutely.
Very direct.
Along those lines, the other things that I see or think about is for the leader to be observant, right? Keep a note of where the introverts or the people who are showcasing that skill sets of being introvert, where they have excelled, right? In a forum, encourage them, give them the points like, hey, I have observed you do this. That was great. Do you mind sharing your inputs on this topic? So you're bolstering their confidence, you're giving them the credit, and then you're opening up a platform where they feel safe to share their new ideas.
Very good. Very good. No, thank you all very much for that feedback. I'm going to step into, and we do have one other discussion question around sort of resolving disagreements with team members. Once we get, there's all sorts of reasons by which we can get into a disagreement, whether it's just missed expectations between people, whether it's, they're just the way people approach things. It is one of those things that will bring about conflict, and, finding constructive ways to resolve these disagreements is going to make not only the individual relationship better, but the team better as a whole. I don't know, would anyone have anything to offer relative to how they've resolved a disagreement with someone on their teams before?
I have some examples of maybe
Okay.
some bad disagreements. So these are both from
Let's try
high school.
one for now.
Okay, this is from a high school situation where the young lady was in a team and the person who was supposed to do a big part of it, they all divided up their work. The person who was supposed to do a big part of it just went out to the beach for the weekend and didn't tell anybody that they were going. And I mean, a pretty good portion of their grade was riding on that person, the team coming together and finishing. So at the last minute, they had heard nothing from the person. They had never heard, I'm not going to be able to do it. My parents are dragging me out of town. They had no communication. The rest of the team members had to come together and do that person's part as well. So then in the presentation, when they presented to the class, the teacher said, everybody presented their part. And then when it came to this person's part, the person had to speak up and say, I didn't do it. I went out of town. So they did it for me. And they basically had to admit to their, what had happened. So there was a huge disagreement with the team, but it didn't come out until the public presentation. So they were unable to resolve their conflict, and they had to kind
Yeah.
of work around that.
Yeah, that's taking it to the very extreme of something really not getting worked out. But eventually, these disagreements don't disappear. They will show up somewhere along the line where if you can't resolve it between them or between yourselves, someone will resolve it for you, and you may not like the way it gets resolved. So I agree. Um,
That was
any
extreme,
other?
but
Yeah, yeah. Any other examples that anyone may want to share?
I've used a mediator when there's been a disagreement with someone. We've gotten a third person involved and told them our perspectives, and this person has to be completely neutral and open to both perspectives, and then they give us their choice and perspective, and that's helped.
Okay. No, that's a great way to bring in a disinterested or an unbiased party to be able to talk through this. Whether it's a member of your team, whether it's someone outside of a team, to try to bring this along. Certainly, those are that's another great way of getting really this to getting it all out there, to have someone else have to listen and understand and take it to heart, to know, is it one side or the other, or is there a third side to all this that sits somewhere in the middle? So those are all great approaches.
there's another approach where maybe the person who's, maybe there's a struggle because the person's not capable or doesn't understand what they're trying to do,
Mhm,
and they might need help. And
mhm,
so I think oftentimes when you go into a situation where there's a disagreement, it feels contentious and it feels like the person is doing it intentionally. But
mhm,
sometimes they might be scared to say they don't know what they're doing or they don't
mhm.
understand, and they might
Right.
just need some help.
Yep. Yep. Certainly getting through the emotions to kind of the facts of the matter will certainly help. So, okay. I'd like to move on because, if you can start bringing these things to resolution, you eventually get to this third phase of what we call norming. It's not quite there yet. We start being cohesive, we start working together, we start setting expectations, we start developing standards. We're going to talk by chat, we're going to talk in email, we're going to write things down, we're not going to write things down. These sort of standards evolve of how the team wants to behave, and people start figuring out, how do they fit in, what is their role, what are they going to be doing, what are they sharing with others, what are they being expected to do on their own. So this really starts getting less centered on yourself, more on the team. Do you find ways of improving communication? And it's that interaction that really brings about trust, and knowing that I can say these things, I can't say these things, I can approach these people. That's where the trust begins in the team. And the personal opinions, they can be shared in the team, they can be valued for what they are in the team, and people will listen and give them some level of validation of what they're seeing or what they're feeling. So I'm hoping that my volunteers here could name all 5 norms that I have in the corner, but these are not the type of norms that I'm talking about. Um, you know, a norm is just, what is the normal behavior that a team is going to, or is going to behave as. what are these standards that I've mentioned that we're going to do, and what does a team get out of these sort of norms, which is, and these are having broad agreements, being able to, it may not specify exactly, when I'm talking about this, or this specific thing, I know that I need to say these things, but more generally, it's going to say, oh, I expect to be interacted with email, or we're all going to meet together at 10 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays, and that's going to be our time to collaborate. Expressing this normal behavior, what is expected of us, is really, um, what's going to make the purpose and behavior of the team, it really set that in stone. Um, and it really helps to play to the sharing and communication, being able to foster that, to provide a safe environment to do that. And really, as in, teams are relationships. Relationships require communication. So that's really what's looking to jumpstart into this norming phase. And being able to do that, and because people as individuals have different communication styles, we talked about introvert, extrovert. Um, there's all sorts of different ways that people are as individuals, that once you put them in a team, some things work together really well, some things don't. And so being able to provide specific examples of how teams can work to break down and to really, take benefit of the differences between people in a team, is really the collaboration we want to foster. So we actually have a few examples that I want to at least describe, that folks can use as part of this communication building and this trust building amongst teams. So we have 3 different exercises that we'll spend a little bit of time with. One of them is called 6 Thinking Hats. It's got some other similar names, but that's what we'll call it here. We have a same problem, different context approach to communication. We'll go through that. And then 5 whys, the most fun and most annoying of all of the collaboration exercises. So let me at least describe these, and we can play with them a little bit. So 6 Thinking Hats is meant as a brainstorming exercise. No wrong answers. They're just ideas. They have no value in their merit at this point. But it does look to call out people to participate. And because it's brainstorming and there are no wrong answers, you can be as wild and crazy and the like as you wish. And it doesn't really require you to make sure that everything is feasible or useful. So the way that they describe this is around 6 different colored hats, 6 different colored hats. White, these are the facts of a particular situation. Um, Red is more of, what do I feel about this? What's the intuition? So those are kind of separating fact from emotion. Black and yellow. Black, why is this thing that we're discussing a bad idea? Yellow is, why is it a good idea? So breaking those ideas in half. And then leading to the kind of the next steps of green and blue hats. Green, where could this go? With the things that we're discussing, where could we take it? And blue is, well, all right, we know we could take it someplace. How would we want to do that? How would we want to organize, or what tasks or what resources do we need to be able to do this? So, um, a very simple problem. And if we had more people, we'd certainly have a more vibrant discussion. But the very wordy version is, ensure that everyone on Earth receives proper nourishment, aka solve world hunger for me right now. But using this exercise, it would be, walking through each of these particular um, aspects. What are the facts? Is it true? Does everyone on Earth receive proper nourishment? I think we could say no, they don't. Um, you know, being able to talk about, um, you know, be able to list facts around this, be able to look at the red hat. What are the emotions that, people are, can be very sad or angry or, disappointed in people or governments or countries or anything around, how does this problem of feeding people not, how does it affect them? Um, you know, looking at the black and yellow hats of, is there a bad reason for not feeding everyone on Earth? Maybe there are, maybe we know that feeding everyone to a proper level is not sustainable. Okay, whether that's bad or not, don't know. But it's part of the discussion. Why is it a good idea? To have people be healthy, to have um, to be able to eliminate certain diseases due to malnutrition and things like that. So these are some of the good ideas you would see. A green hat might lead you to, okay, maybe everyone is nourished, everyone gets healthier. It could lead to lower healthcare costs around the world. That would, that's where it could lead, whether it's good or bad. It could also lead to everyone becomes obese and unhealthy and it creates even more health problems. It it could lead there. We don't really know, but to be able to say these are the possibilities helps us to talk through this. But then also, some of the more controversial ones could end up with the blue hat. How would you make this happen? Um, it could be that you tear down half the cities and plant corn and other, vegetables and grow, and you could, there's all sorts of things that are probably, they haven't been done yet because they're hard. But how are different things we could do to really bring about this change and what it would take? So that's kind of the different approaches that you would use with this six thinking hat model. Um, any comments from my volunteers around this particular type of exercise? If you've used it before, the things that you see in it.
So there was something on the chat that was, this is a
Yeah,
really,
John, this is Cynthia. I was going to say, I have used this before, mostly in teams and things, but
Okay.
you can get in the habit of using these things with other life kinds of decisions and things you're going through. If you're struggling with the decision, think about, well, what are the facts about it? What are, with the red and the black and the yellow, what's good, what's bad, what can go on. So it's good to keep this in your mind as you go through, and it'll help you think through um, really just about any situation. It's just a good fundamental thing to have. It's a good way, a good perspective to look at something 360.
Cynthia,
Absolutely.
that's a really good point. Thinking about things like, should I stay in band in high school, or should I
Right.
join this club, or
Exactly.
Yeah.
some of those things have bigger impacts to your future or your happiness, or things that you haven't even really thought about. And if you could
Right.
walk through something like this, it might really help you make that choice.
And it'll also help you to think, right? Do you really need to follow the norm or the cool trend, what people follow, or versus, what really makes sense for you, right? Than following anyone blindly.
Absolutely. So as you can see, this exercise, while I'm bringing it to you here in a group setting to help a group come to some consensus around an idea or a problem you're facing, as the volunteers here have mentioned, this can be used practically in your own life to be able to help make decisions on anything. So something to keep in mind.
I definitely think anybody listening to this recording should think about, why should I join STEM and why should I pursue a career in STEM using this exercise?
Mhm.
That's a cool one.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And what I like about this framework is that a person can use this for their own individual decisions, as well as, a whole team can use this to make a group decision as well. I like how, extensible and useful this framework is for everything.
Okay,
Makes
great.
sense.
All right, I'm going to move on to our next exercise. This is sort of, and maybe we can play it with our volunteers quickly here. This is around same problem, different context. Being able to take a problem and see if it exists in a different situation. Being able to look at what, this problem may be solved in different ways based on the environment. So, as the example here is, I want to put out a fire. How would I put out a fire? So, to my volunteers, how do you put out a fire?
I've seen
Pour
people put
water
out
on
fires
it.
with water.
Pour water on it. Great. That, water would be everyone's first choice of putting out a fire. What if you had been cooking bacon on your stove and it caught fire? Would that be a good way to put out a fire?
I
Probably
don't.
not.
No,
Yeah, I don't think that would be a good way to.
No, it's a
To throw out a
horrible
fire.
no,
idea because grease will get spread all over, and now your fire goes everywhere because the grease is still on fire. The water merely makes it travel. So putting out a grease fire, you couldn't use water. What if I was in a computer room and there's a fire and I'm surrounded by computers? Would water be the best approach for putting out a fire in that context?
Definitely not.
no,
No, someone's
no,
getting electrocuted.
yeah,
Um, or you're ruining equipment, everything else. So, it's being able to, we know that at least in this example, the problem seems very simple. I have flames, I need to put them out. There's, depending on the context, there's environments, there's different ways of dealing with that problem to solve the problem and to not create new ones. So sometimes when looking at, if I have a particular problem, other it isn't so much finding different contexts. Well, it is, I guess. You're looking at different contexts to see, well, maybe I can use an approach that I'd normally use in a computer room for also on my stove, or maybe just in my backyard. What are the different ways that I can do this to try to reuse an idea and apply it towards a new an existing problem with a slightly different context. So, and that elicits discussion to help a team understand not just the solutions, but also to understand their problem. There may be aspects of the problem that were just vague. I didn't tell you what type of fire. When you're trying to make decisions, maybe now in this example, you found out knowing what type of fire it is makes a difference. And we're going to need to have more conversation around what the actual problem is. I'd like to quickly move on to the 5 whys type of exercise. This is meant to get to the root of an issue, get to the bottom of why something's happening, and to really have everyone participate in asking the questions as well as trying to find answers and work their way through a problem. You will see this, yes, like I mentioned, in root cause analysis. Where, how do we fully understand a problem before we can solve it? And yes, you're going to sound like a first grader. Why that? Why this? Why that? The example I use to the right here is a very simple question. Why is it cold outside? Well, up here in the Northeast, well, we could say because it's winter. Well, it's not quite winter yet. It's fall, but it's getting colder. But in this example, okay, well, why is it winter? And be able to walk through that. Well, we rotate. The Earth rotates. It travels around the sun. The Earth moves, or this portion of the Earth moves further away to a limited degree, but enough to create seasons. And then well, why is this part of the Earth further away? Well, because the Earth's tipped on its axis, and the rotation of everything, that's just the way it works. Well, and then, well, why does the Earth revolve around the sun? Okay, yeah, you've gone quickly into first grader mode of asking all these questions over and over, but it really speaks to, okay, gravity of the sun, and how the Earth and the sun work together. This is all, planetary science, but you can get to the point of, all right, so why is it cold outside? You could say gravity, and you would be correct. You know, it helps to have, though, that whole context of how you've moved through these stages. What are the types of things you've been able to elicit in asking that next level question? Um, you know, so there's just different ways. Sometimes you don't get 5 whys. Sometimes you only get 3. Sometimes you could get 7 or 9, or it starts branching out as a tree of, I can have different questions elicit multiple answers, and I might want to move through them. But it's really an example of constantly questioning why something exists or why it behaves in a particular way. And that sort of conversation is great within a team to bring about different perspectives.
Without sounding,
Has anyone
with,
on the team used this?
I've used this at work. This
Mhm.
process called retrospectives, where people kind of figure
Mm.
out what went wrong and talk about how to make it better. So if something happens, something bad happened in the team, without blaming people, you try to figure out why it happened so you could do it again. And
Mhm.
honestly, the whole sounding like a first grader part is pretty fun, because it takes a little bit of the pressure off, and you can kind of just be a little bit silly to try to figure out what the process or
Mhm.
the problem is. I also think I've used this with young ladies before, trying to figure out choices that they've made that they
Mm.
maybe didn't want to make again, or maybe they would have made again, and talk through. It doesn't really just have to be a team. It can be
Oh.
a couple people, who maybe a trusted advisor or friend that's walking you through a situation like, should I take this class? Should I go on this trip? Should I keep dancing or quit?
Yeah,
Should I take a STEM class? Things like that, where you can have, it kind of helps you just think about the problem a little bit deeper.
absolutely. I mean, this is, I bring this to you as something to use within a team, but as we've seen here, it doesn't need to be. This is trying to get to the root of any problem, whether you're trying self-evaluation or communicating amongst multiple people trying to bring about resolution. It's a highly effective way of bringing out those details. So, any other comments or things like that? Okay. I'm gonna I want to just talk quickly about some of the last phases here. Um, when we hit a performing stage, it's when people pretty much believe that team is operating well. It's meeting the needs of the task, and the team is operating optimally. It knows its strengths and weaknesses, as both individuals, as teams. They understand what they're doing. So this performing phase is something that we really seek to attain in the development of the team. and it took a lot of work to get there. Trust me, the storming and norming phases are your longest. You hope to take advantage of all of that in your performing phase. But then your adjourning phase, kind of, teams come to an end. Sports season's over, the team is done. The homework assignment is done. Mission's accomplished. Well, sometimes not. Maybe you didn't finish. Maybe you want to celebrate. We got this done. Maybe the team fell apart because it never hit performing. It still reaches an adjourning phase. So, all as the facts are that you've completed the task and everyone's done. Hopefully you felt good about how you got there and what you've accomplished. So, in closing, I do want to say, for anyone who's in any sort of team, whether you're on a sports team, whether you're in a band, in a chorus, in a class, in a family, everyone goes through these types of things when you've got more than one person who has to work together. Even when you may have a set of people who've worked together really well on something, but then you change what they're going to do. The team has to go through this all over again because people need to remember or understand, where is it that I fit in this? What are we trying to accomplish? The team building exercises that you're off doing as part of this whole Young Women in Technology program, they need this context, need to understand. Although these are all the other presentations you're in are great and they serve a purpose for the time you're in. When you start looking at longer running teams, you're going to want to look at a model like this. And if you want, a more entertaining version of this, feel free to search on YouTube for Tuckman Avengers. A gentleman does a great job of explaining this whole model, but using the Avengers movies as sort of the model of how team building occurs between Captain America and Iron Man and Tony Stark and things like that. So it's a really fun half hour to take on that. So I do want to say, Henry Ford's words, 100 years later, are still very, very much important. Coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. Hitting that norming and performing stage is really the success that continues to drive us. So I want to thank you for your time, and on behalf of all of my volunteers here, I want to thank you for participation and listening to this and watching this presentation. I hope you found it useful. I do want to say, check your registration email for where you need to go next. And most of all, thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You.